So, yeah, we just got moved in. We still got all kinds of boxes over here. We're gonna have to be busy for the next week, just trying to. It's funny when you move because we didn't do a good job of like putting aside essential things. So we get over here, and it's like all the things you just assume you're gonna be able to reach for weren't there. It's like, ah,
Right.
yeah. So, book about how to move without stress.
How'd you do with books?
With books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
did you get rid of many or
Yeah, oh yeah. If we kind of filter, 20 years in one, 21 years in one place, so we did a lot of filtering and
Wow.
purging and all that. But so I think we got it down that we'll be able to fit into this place. Yeah.
Simplifying, huh, Tim?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, we were knocking around in this 5-bedroom house, and 48 weeks of the year it wasn't being used very much. So
Right.
it's like this is ridiculous. So anyway, yeah.
well, this probably was a great place so while you were caring for your parents,
Oh yeah. Well, and the really neat thing, there's a whole lot of neat. I could spend 30 minutes talking about one of the neat things about the family that's buying it is their parent. They're quite a bit younger than us, but his father and mother are uh, pretty old. They're getting up there, and they're already when they saw the house, they said this is what we're looking for, mainly for because they'll be in the same situation, and it sounds like maybe sooner rather than later. So that was a great thing for us to know that a family's moving in that will be able to use that home to take care of their parents like we did. So
yeah, that always feels good, I'm sure.
yep, yep. So anyway, is it quiet around Christ the King this morning?
There's been some activity with the school. I'm not sure what's going on, but I think it's parents stopping by and basically doing drive-bys to pick up supplies or something like that. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
100% sure what's going on.
What are their plans? What are their plans for opening?
Going to open on the 19th, and they've made a lot of adjustments to have small groups of kids. So they're looking at doing regular classes where the kids are in school all through the day. Tends to be in a situation where the kids will stay in one spot more often than not, rather than move from class to class, though. And so teachers will move, or else occasionally they'll hear their instructions through the computers in their school classrooms.
So there's none by computer. There's none by. None of it is. What do they call that?
Non-traditional learning. Yeah.
Right. None of the non-traditional learning.
No, I think that's they were it was like one of those things seriously considering, but they've done a great job putting together a plan that keeps the kids in these small, they call them cohorts,
Yeah.
and really keeping them isolated even though they're in school. They're going to minimize contact and all that. So they did a really good job. So I think plan B always will be, if they have to, they'll obviously be ready to do the distance learning thing. So
Mhm.
well, I think Father Paul, we're right at 10 o'clock. So feel free to kick us off and get us started here.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Here we are as we're moving in the month of August, and one of the great ministries that's emerged in our city over the last 20 years or so has been the ministry of the Catholic Action Center. So with us today is Ginny Ramsey, who is the director and founder of the center, and still very, very involved, as so many of us know. And I'll start us with a prayer, and then we'll just kind of hear the story of what's been happening and what's going on, these days in the midst of the pandemic. So we pray, Lord, you call us to love those who are struggling in life, those who are hurting, those who are homeless. Bless us as we enter into a conversation that helps us to be moved in our minds and our hearts in a supportive way of the Catholic Action Center and its ministry. Bless all those who are part of the staff and volunteers, and particularly those who are clients. Bless them with the gifts that they need at these times. We pray to you then through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Well, Jenny, welcome. Glad you're with us. And start off, I guess, probably the overview. What's it like at the Catholic Action Center during this time of the pandemic?
Well, it's definitely a new normal. There's some things that have dramatically changed and others that are the same. The most difficult part of this was that we had to make the decision back in late March to limit the number of folks who could be at the center. You know, we had 143 people on our bed list on one week, and then we had to let them start we didn't remove anyone, but as they started going away and not being there for a week, they were not allowed to come back. The biggest thing was that we took 47 of them down to Cliffview, as you all know, pretty immediately because they were the most vulnerable. They were those who had the health conditions, those who were over 65. One of the things that some folks don't realize about the center is that we're a community. We're not a shelter, but we do shelter folks. So we're the only one sheltering those who have the most dramatic health issues. And people who can't do their daily activities. We have it so that people can come, and we have others help them, whether it be, you know, the shower, the toilets, etc. So because of that, we have the highest percentage of the most vulnerable who stay at the Catholic Action Center. So those folks went down for over 100 days and were kept safe and had lots of services at Cliffview, which we had acquired last November, planning to open a drug and alcohol treatment facility by the 1st of May with Mountain Comprehensive Care. Due to the COVID, that's changed. We're holding that off until things are safer. But having that space and being able to keep our elderly and our most vulnerable safe during COVID has been a blessing. So as we took those 47 out, we got down to 98 folks that were left. Then by attrition, we're down to 76. Now that means that they have found a place to live. Many of them went home. One of the good things about the COVID is that people are looking at each other differently. Families are, you know, binding the wounds. They are appreciating life and being able to reconnect. So we've seen a lot of that happen. But at this point, we're still above the number that the health department would like us to have for true social distancing. But our folks are absolutely following all of the guidelines. We have either scared them to death or we have, made them think they lose their bed if they don't go along, because it is so important to keep a congregate shelter safe. As we all know, if one, just like with the school, if one gets it, what happens to the rest? So we've been blessed. We've had 197 tests so far, and all are negative. We had one false positive, and he definitely was a false positive. He had to be segregated and put in a motel, but the health department tested him twice, and immediately he was negative. So I mean, we feel like we've got a dome of protection by the good Lord and by the people doing what they're supposed to. So it's different. We can't have volunteers. Our whole ministry, we're now in our 21st year, and it's been based on the fact that the community comes in and serves folks. It's been based on the fact that it's all of us in it together, but we had to close the doors to the volunteers also. The health department felt very strongly with that. Folks coming and going would absolutely be, too high a risk. So at this point, our core volunteers and our folks on the bed list come, but we did resume about a month ago asking people to bring the meals, because that's what we do. We do not have budgets to provide the meals, but people in the community stepped up beautifully. For the first 3.5 months, Lundy's donated 102,000 meals to us to be able to distribute for our people at the center, for the folks at Cliffview, and also to distribute in the community, because there are so many people who are left out right now. So going forward, we are asking folks through our website to sign up for a lunch or a dinner. Yes, we are asking them to bring it, but they just come to our kitchen door, ring the doorbell, and our volunteers who are part of our community take it in safely, social distancing, etc. And it's worked beautifully for the past month. We need people's help doing that because we're not set up to have to isolate ourselves from the community. And that was one of the barriers and challenges we had to face. But of course, because of the wonderful community that we have, and I have to shout out to Christ the King. You all signed up to do, we're asking for casseroles for the evening meals, because that's an easy, easy enough way, because people can prepare them in advance and just drop them off at the door. Well, we asked for like 6 to 8 casseroles, large ones. Christ the King signed up and they brought us 48 for one meal, which was a wonderful thing. Meg had called me and said, I think we got extra. And I said, oh, it's wonderful, because now we have backup for those nights that someone doesn't show with the food. So Christ the King is also signed up for another casserole run, I think pretty soon. And then in the parish council has already signed up for their day in December, their night in December, which we're having to tell them we don't know if it'll be different. It could be just drop off and not be able to interact with the people, which our folks are missing all the volunteers. I must tell you, it's, it does change a lot, but it is making them more self-reliant and more responsible in a lot of ways. And that's part of the goodness that we're seeing, their connections. Our people are in it together. They know they are, and they are standing up to what needs to be done to keep our community safe and healthy.
Great. Well, Jenny, of course, as we go along, we've got viewers out there and there might be some questions coming in. Could you review, not everybody knows about Cliffview. Cliffview was the Diocesan Retreat Center on the Boyle and Garrett County line, and that had closed and was available, and it's worked out great for it to be a facility linked up with the Catholic Action Center. And what kind of staff is out there, and can you say just a little bit more about the acquisition of that?
Well, right now we are on a lease with an option to purchase, and we took over all operations as of November 8th of 2019. Right now, one of the exciting things we're doing is to make sustainable agriculture. We thought that would be part of the Mountain Comprehensive Care Treatment Facility as they came in. But what we have done is that we are advancing that as we speak. We have AmeriCorps and we have Corps volunteers who have developed gardens, and we have chickens, and we have eggs, and we have our God's worms to be able to make sustainable agriculture. So we've been able to develop these pieces, plus we're putting in a greenhouse in the next 2 months. AmeriCorps group is committed to us through next May. So they are not only the workers in the field, but they're actually being able to help develop the system to do the sustainable agriculture. And one of the beautiful things about it is that we determined to go on and start with it because of the COVID and people in need of food. We are producing almost an acre of corn and beans and tomatoes and potatoes and sweet potatoes, trying to make it very market basket kind of things that are being distributed to the poor in Garrett County and Lincoln County. We have a lot of relationships with those folks in those counties. And the fear, as we all know, is that as the COVID continues to rage, people don't have access to food. They don't have access to this good food, particularly, but we're able to be producing with turning Cliffview and God's land into a source of feeding the hungry in those counties. So it's been a exciting, it's been interesting. I mean, we're not, we have turning it into a agricultural, as well as, we still have, of course, the I'm going to call it the clubhouse. It's not a clubhouse, the retreat center. And we have 3 folks who are staying down there, keeping, doing the maintenance, doing the prep for when Mountain Comp can move. But we had a very interesting thing that happened this week. I've been saying all along, what are we going to do with Cliffview this fall? And we knew that the good Lord would lead us to what was needed, because we did not want to take our most vulnerable back, because we are making adjustments at the Catholic Action Center. We're actually increasing our size. We have a construction project that starts next Wednesday, where we'll be able to bring in more people, because half of our upstairs of our building, the state moved out. And we have been wanting them to move for 4 years. So now we've been able to reclaim that space to create more space for the folks at the center. So we won't have to ship off, if you wish, our most vulnerable. We'll have the space and ability to care for them in their home at the Catholic Action Center. But this was the thing. We have migrant workers that were coming in for Tailor Made Farm, and they needed a place for them to be safe. And we discussed it. And so we have 30 legal migrant workers who will come in and begin utilizing the space at Cliffview for 2.5 months. And so by the middle of November, we'll be seeing where we are and finding out if it is a space that we need for families or for whatever is needed during the COVID. And, it is considered, we consider it emergency housing for those who are appropriate there and can be cared for. So it's been quite a journey. I'll laugh about the plans, as we were talking about the plans for the school has made. One thing we've all learned during this time, we make the plans and the good Lord and the COVID change them. So, it's been a lot of planning, but we do feel like we've had a dome of protection over the center. I swear, it's been a real, walk in faith, because everyone was saying that place will implode with the COVID, that people will get ill and it will be impossible. No, our folks have stepped up. They've done the right thing, and, they're proud of it. And it's made our community just stronger.
So Jenny, let me be clear, the 47 people who are at Cliffview, they'll be moving to the upstairs area of the Catholic Action Center?
No, they moved back. We moved them back a month ago.
Okay.
Now there were only 29 left. We were able to get the others placed in their permanent housing. We had Mountain Comprehensive Care and everyone working. Our whole goal with all our folks is to get them a home. Yeah. Well, what was beautiful is with Mountain Comprehensive Care working with them, and even though this is a difficult time to get housing, we were able to reconnect and connect these folks, who many of them have checks. I mean, they're older, they're more vulnerable. It's just they didn't have the means to get into housing. So we were able to cut that number down to 29. And we brought them back to Lexington, and since then 5 more have gotten in. So we still have our vulnerable, but we have vulnerables now at the center, but they want to stay there, and we can keep them safe with the distancing and with everything in place. So next, when we open upstairs, which will be the 1st of November is the expected time, because the flu and the winter and everything will be hitting, we'll be able to open our doors to more folks who are on the street. And they basically upstairs will be the healthy men and downstairs will be the vulnerables and the women. So that's a way to separate. And the exciting news with that is we're going to be putting in 3 quarantine rooms upstairs with negative air, et cetera, because we have Health First is with us in this project, and Health First is in our building now. So that will impact things greatly for them to have that space and for them to be there to care for our folks, you know, whether it be the flu, whether it be the COVID, you know, we will feel much safer when we know we have a quarantine rooms for our people when it's needed.
Okay. And maybe it's my own head that's a little mixed up. So is anybody living at Cliffview now other than the caretakers?
Not until August 30th. On August 30th, our migrant workers are moving.
Okay, I'm clear now. Thank you.
15th. Right now, only the AmeriCorps, there are a few of them that are staying to work the gardens, and they're from EKU. It was a wonderful God thing that happened. We got an email that no one was taking the AmeriCorps because of the COVID back in, I guess it was May. And we said, we'd love them to be able to help us develop these gardens to help create, you know, develop this food for people in need.
Okay.
So there are a lot of pieces and parts of this, Paul. It's hard for people to keep up with it. And some days I have to stop.
I know. Yeah.
Which way are we going with this? But we feel like that the biggest thing the Catholic Action Center, I think, has been known for is keeping, you know, being open to what comes to us. And if we have the capacity to be able to care for the people, whether it be a different way or whether it be the ordinary way, we're going to take it. And that's what was so difficult in having to say no. We've never said no to people to be able to come to the Catholic Action Center. But since the COVID, only those on our bed list are allowed. So those who come or get in touch with us and want a place to stay, it's no for now. We will not open up any new beds until the 1st of November.
Can you make referrals for them in any way, or is there any other place?
There aren't many places, and yes, we will always tell them go check with Salvation Army and Hope Center are taking in limited folks, very limited the way they're doing it, but there are some. A lot of the shelters that are in surrounding counties have closed. Because it's, you know, congregate living is a challenge during the COVID. And when you have volunteers who mainly staff those smaller shelters around in the surrounding counties, most of them are older and they can't take the chance of getting the COVID. So what we are working very directly a lot with Lexington Fair Housing. We have a group of 20 organizations that are working on trying to keep people from being evicted, but we also are aware of what housing is available out there for those with little income, and it's not a lot. We're going to face a huge increase in homelessness in Lexington in the next 2 months. We already are with over 1,500 families to try to keep them in their housing. And there's a lot of legal stuff going on. There's all kinds of things happening and all kinds of really good people working on this effort. But the fact of the matter is there are a lot of people that are going to lose their housing and be living in their cars or try to go to a shelter. And that's another reason we're holding off on Cliffview as far as what will happen permanently. Because it could be, you know, we're going to see things we haven't seen in Lexington before now. I've been doing it over 25 years on the streets with our folks. Before we started the center, we had our Feed the Hungry, as you remember, Father Paul. We had the Feed the Hungry program. We had the different things that were going on. So nothing has ever been like this. Nothing, and we all need to pray that there's some solutions found, you know, between now and winter for a lot of people who will be increased number that will be suffering on the streets.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the difference in terms of how a day is spent by somebody who's staying at the Catholic Action Center these days? So somebody lives there through the day, and lives there through the night, and I guess in pre-COVID times, they would very often be out. They'd be, having a job of some kind. And what's going on now? Is that pretty much still the same, or is it shifted in any kind of way, or people staying at the center all day long, or how's that going?
They always have. There's always been those who don't have jobs and don't, they just stay. The difference is we're not allowing anyone to come in for meals that are not on the bed list. So this community is self-contained. Yes, people still go out. They still have jobs. We encourage them to. They're all working at it. And that's why we've been able to get some of them jobs and housing. That part is really not different, except that they are a self-contained community now. We do not let folks come in and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. However, we do have them come to our kitchen door, ring the doorbell, and we hand them food. So we're still feeding those who can't come in, but we are not able to bring them in the center. I'd say one of the biggest differences is the responsibility that each of our community members are taking. We have chores that they always have done. There's 4 hours of chores that each resident does a week, but they're doing more than that, because when we're down in numbers, that means some of those chores are being left. So they're stepping up and taking care. And, there are those who don't. There are those who do their minimum of 4 hours. But then there are others that are really taking pride in that this is their home. There's a whole different sense. There's a gratitude. There is, they know that by being there, they're safe. And if they are not there anymore, they'll be out on those streets, which are not safe. Mm-hmm. So they appreciate it. So the attitude is the biggest change. As far as the regular day-to-day, we're doing the same thing. We're just a big family living in a 1055 Industry Road. So they're good.
How do you see them offering encouragement to one another? There's got to be some people who are worried and kind of down and with a sense of dread,
We've worked on that a lot. Now, as you know, we have a weekly Sunday meeting. And at those Sunday meetings, we have been discussing the COVID ever since the middle of March. And we answer questions. We brought in healthcare professionals to do that also. We talk about the fears. In fact, sadly, and some of the folks, Father Paul, you may know her, we had one of our core volunteers, Helen, who did our night shift at the community inn and now at the center. She had been a core volunteer with us for 12 years. And sadly, she had a massive heart attack one night and she passed away at the center. We had another woman who passed away in her sleep. First time we have had anyone pass away at night in their sleep since we've been doing for 21 years. But Helen, at her death, death and grieving, all about that, Father Paul. It brings people together in a different way. Mm-hmm. It brings people to be open and to appreciate and to discuss. They really have become a community that has each other's back, and they've lived through not only the COVID, but the loss of Helen and the loss of their other guest, who was a friend of many of theirs. And both of their husbands have continued with us. So they've been supporting their family. And as they had said, this was their family. And so they have been able to step up and support both Stephen and Bill, who have lost who had lost their loved ones. And COVID's done a lot of things, but I think one of the biggest things is make connection between people. So we've been very direct. Everyone had to get tested once right before we were bringing the folks back from Cliffview, and nobody complained. And they knew they couldn't complain. They could have complained, but they were all, and we've had a lot of them that have had to be tested since then. We check everybody's temperature when they come in. If anybody has sniffles, if anybody has a sore throat, if anybody's feeling bad, we send them to get tested. We don't wait, because we know that there can be those without symptoms, but definitely if there's any symptom, we get them tested immediately. So they feel the protection that we all have in that community. And they are feeling that more than we've ever been able to create it in the years that we've been doing this. So I would say that's a huge change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a good change.
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and again, many commentators are saying, these are terrible days, but there's good that's coming in the midst of it as we in a sense draw from our better angels, I guess you could say. And we're living in a time, of course, where it's not only COVID, but there's been the terrible thing with George Floyd and other situations like that. The Black Lives Matter. Your clientele is, not just people who are white. It embraces a variety of ethnicities. And what does all that mean? How's that touched life at the Catholic Action Center?
Well, we do have some folks who are innately prejudiced. We've got a 72-year-old man who likes to use the N-word, white, and that's always going to be a problem. So we have dealt with a lot of that before, but with this movement, again, we've had more open discussions. We had a Sunday community meeting that just discussed it. That was all we did. And we always are talking about respect for each other, but that the whole movement that is occurring, and some people have opinions that we wouldn't want to hear, but we have, we listen to them. I mean, it's all about understanding that we have to respect each other, because that's one of our core values, as we all know. But they know that. Black Lives Matter. These are the folks who have lived our folks who have grown up and are part of the Black community understand this totally. We have police. We have a neighborhood policeman who is very close to all of us. And he's the very first Sunday after we opened in 2017, Eddie Thurman is his name, and he came to our community meeting. And he started off by saying, how many of you all have run into blank hole cops? Everybody was sitting there, what? And he raised his hand. And he started talking about the relationship with police and sometimes the prejudice that the police have, because our folks don't only see the prejudice because of the color of their skin, but because they are experiencing homelessness. There are a lot of folks that talk about those people. We deal with that constantly, the NIMBYs, all of that. That's been part of our culture, whether we like it or not. But during this time, I think there's becoming a greater understanding with our folks, but also with the neighbors. We still have ones who want to fuss and fume, those homeless, and, bunch them as if they're just a group of people to be avoided. But that's died down. We're seeing better responses because when everyone is on a fair playing, the COVID is making everyone on a fair playing field. Nobody's safe. Nobody's being, there's all kinds of fear. Now, that doesn't have to do with Black Lives Matter, but it does in some respects, because our folks who are not Black also feel that same prejudice as being a man or woman experiencing homelessness. So we've had good discussions about it, and it's nothing new to them. I mean, that is one thing I'd say. It's like, well, everybody's understanding it now. And they've shared a lot of their stories. And we feel like that's the best thing we can do is keep talking.
Yeah. Well, you speak of the family, of the community, and I know there's no stereotype of somebody who's homeless, but it really runs the gamut, doesn't it? There's some people who've been very successful in life and things have just fallen apart for one reason or another. People have had addictions, I guess, that have impacted them. How do you handle folks who are part of the community and who are also struggling with addictions?
Well, we do have Mountain Comprehensive Care in our building. And we encourage, in fact, we set up appointments for all of them about 6 weeks ago to deal with the COVID, because of the fears, as you were talking about, and how everyone is having some baseline anxiety or depression. And also to deal with any addiction problems they wish to address. We can't make them. We cannot. The only thing we can do is encourage them as their family to get that help. Some have taken it, and some have. It's harder to get into residential treatment now, just because, same way as we didn't open one because of the COVID, So a lot of them are being surrounded, and we have increased the number that are participating in the AANA that we have on site. So things are, I think it's making people look inside and examine themselves differently with the sense of this, the unsettling world that we're living in.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I know pretty much the story of the development, but I'm not sure if all of our viewers do. We've been talking about the year 2020 and the year of the pandemic and all. Can you take us back in time and tell the story of the development of the Catholic Action Center, and might even reflect on the movement from 6th Street to where you are, and
Right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Well, in 1995, the way I got involved is the mayor asked me to join a group to get the faith communities involved in the Welfare to Work program. Remember, that was a big paradigm shift that was happening. All of a sudden, there were going to be people losing their disability, losing their food stamps, and possibly losing what we used to call their welfare checks. And that was under the Clinton administration when it was all changing. So that was the beginning. She asked me to get involved because I was doing peace and justice at Christ the King. And so we got others. Actually, we got 238 faith communities to come together and discuss how we could make a difference. Some were interested in being sure to feed the hungry. That's one thing people like. It's very obvious in the scripture, Matthew 25 is very obvious, feed the hungry. So people do like to do that. And sometimes they can keep it at a distance and it can be more comfortable. But I always say it's their portal into understanding the life of those experiencing homelessness. So anyway, we had 5 different groups that we set up and went forth with trying to make a difference during that major change, in people's lives due to the changes in not only the welfare to work, but like I said, their disability was being changed. People who were on disability because of drugs and alcohol, they cut it. One day they had it, the next day they didn't. Now, the problem with that was they when those people were assigned to be able to receive the disability, they may have had a mental illness also, but they didn't go into that. Mental illness was being covered now, but drugs and alcohol weren't. So there were a lot of people who were being kind of cast aside without the review of what their real situation was. And we saw devastation occurring. So as we continued the Feed the Hungry program and we had a transportation program, we had a mentoring program, which still is going on. What were the other ones? Oh, we had a financial education program. And it seems like there was one more. But anyway, as we continued on, it became obvious in meeting the people and getting through the Feed the Hungry program and seeing hundreds of them come for the food, that we needed to do something more in Lexington, Kentucky. And so people started asking, why don't we start a Catholic worker house? And I didn't know what Catholic worker was, but I found out. And Judy McLaughlin and I committed to the fact to get a place to accept people more than just having 3 or 4 meals a week. And it was kind of a strange way it happened. But the bottom line is, from that, we, one Sunday morning, we found this church that had been abandoned down at 5th and Chestnut, which was just a block from one of the largest, what did we call them then? Bluegrass Aspendale. It was the housing where 370 some odd families lived that were living in poverty. It was HUD housing. So we found that place and called the people, and the next thing we knew, we were able to get it and open. And at first we opened 5 days a week, and then it became, for 8 hours a day. And then it became obvious there was no place for these folks to go when we closed the door. So we started and continued on and renovated it, and were able to be open 24/7. And that was, the Catholic Action Center operated there for 17 years. And it had outgrown itself for sure, but we were so blessed to be able, because the city had tried to close our community in, which was another location we'd opened for night shelter. It ended up that the Department of Justice told them they had to help us find a place to take care of these people. So basically the law helped us find, the judicial system helped us be able to purchase 1055 Industry Road. And it's been ups and downs and ins and outs all these 20 plus years, but these are our friends. We give them a place to be. We give them a place they can belong. And that's the most important thing, is that every human being that is suffering through homelessness or suffering, they're disenfranchised. They're left out. There's some story behind it why they're not with family, and maybe they don't have family. Maybe they're suffering with mental illness. Maybe it is a drug and alcohol problem. But they're still God's children, and they're our brothers and sisters. And that you find, if we welcome them with hospitality, we say that CAC stands for Care, Accountability, and Connection. We connect them to every service that's out there that can help them. We hold them accountable to go and to try to make those steps, but we also need to somehow add the compassion and mercy in that too. Because when you're dealing with folks who've been broken and disenfranchised and thrown away, they need a little extra help. But I've met some of the most amazing human beings ever that have come from our streets. Ones with the biggest hearts, the biggest faith, just amazing. And yes, some of them are very difficult, but so are our relatives. Let's all be honest. We all know difficult people. We can be difficult. So, there's no difference in them. It's just simply that they've been disenfranchised.
Say sparks a couple of questions, and one would even be the name of the center. What's that meant in the way of interfaith or ecumenical witness, or how, has there ever been like a reluctance to come to this Catholic place, or an understanding increase of what the church is all about, whether with clients or volunteers or supporters?
I'd say both and if we're real straight about it, the Catholic Action Center is not part of the Catholic Church. It is a Catholic worker movement. We're not supported. We're supported by the people of the Catholic Church. We're supported by the people of the Methodist Church and the Jewish faith and everybody else too. But the Catholic, most people, Catholic meaning universal, Catholic Action Center based on Dorothy Day's work, the Catholic worker movement, saying that we're all responsible for caring for each other and that the community can be that solution. So yes, back in, there have been times that it's been very difficult having that word Catholic, and there have been times that it's been such a blessing. But that's who we are, and we stay with it. But we have, every faith tradition. People know that we're all volunteers. They know we don't get federal, state, local monies. We just depend on the community, as the Catholic worker movement was about. Depend on the community to take care of those in need. So yeah.
Again, as I see it, it's Jesus in action, and lots of people trying to walk in his footsteps.
We have our Catholic social teachings embedded on our wall, and we have our folks read it and know it. And they said, in fact, I've had some of them say, you all have different 10 commandments, don't you? But there aren't 10 of them. There are only 7. You say, no, 10 commandments are what you're not supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to live. But yeah, it's always fascinating. And our folks have gotten there. There's so much about the rhythm of the center. Like they know when you all are having, they know about Lent because we get all the leftovers from the fish fries. They know about, they know about Holy Thursday. That's been a huge piece of our ministry. They know about, we celebrate a lot of the liturgical things, even though they don't know that's what it is per se. They may be rock hard Baptists, they may be total agnostics, but it's kind of like what St. Francis said, you preach the gospel and only sometimes use words.
What's it been like, the experience of bishops coming on Holy Thursday and washing the feet of the clients?
It's a good thing. I think it's a recognition. There's always a tension normally between Catholic worker movements and the diocese. Honestly, we did have to get permission to use the word Catholic. We haven't seen it as a tension. Others might, because we might get out there a little bit. But it's important for the ministers and the hierarchy of our Catholic faith to recognize that, taking care of our brothers and sisters is a core part of our Catholic social teaching. And we've never had anyone who is against that. They've always been for it, and it gives them an opportunity to live it. So we feel like we're a big opportunity for a lot of folks, but we absolutely, Bishop John is, as a Franciscan, of course, is totally amazing as far as his emphasis on caring for people. And, we really, we appreciate all of the clergy. And we did try, and you may remember this, Paul, we were trying to have a mass at the center at least once a week. Well, that didn't go over very well. It didn't work for the priests, it didn't work for our people. So we do have Bible study and we do have services that they put on. They're in charge of. They're not used to be, when you've got that much of an eclectic group, we don't want to force them. We're not Rice Christians. We're never going to force them to do something in order to be fed, etc. They just have to do their chores. We're going to force them to do their chores. But, I think that the most important piece is that faith is interwoven into the whole ministry and that our people see it and know it. They know that all these people that come help are coming to help out of compassion and out of their faith. Some people it's just compassion, and that's fine. But other people, their faith leads them to that compassion because ours is a different world. Many people, we all like to, our bubbles are all different. Our bubble here in Chevy Chase, we love it. But when I leave here and go to the Catholic Action Center, it's a new bubble. Let me tell you, it's so a lot of people, and we have so many people that support us in different ways. I mean, I'll just get into this. We can always use people's donations, particularly now, because we can't take in donations. Usually for 20 plus years, we just go out and beg for what we needed. Now things aren't as available. Supplies are more a challenge. Of course, we beg for the food, but there's so many other things that it costs, that COVID costs, as I call them. And we also refer to BC and AC. BC is before COVID and AC is after COVID. And we're all looking forward to that after COVID where we can bring everybody in and celebrate our 20th year. We were going to have I don't know if you remember it, our 10th year anniversary, we had Please Don't Call Me Homeless, I Don't Call You Homed, the play that our people wrote and put on and performed for 30,000 people. I mean, it was an amazing thing. We were working on our 20th year. Please Don't Call Me Homeless, I Don't Call You Homed, Part 2. In fact, we were thinking we'd do a lot of it via, video, because there are ways to do it, but we can't even pull the cast of characters together that we need because we have directors from UK, we have music people they're really professionals that get involved to help us. And we can't do that now until AC after COVID. So we'll look forward to that. The other sad thing is that I haven't announced yet, and I might as well tell you all, unless we come up with something very different, there'll be no 25th annual Faith and Community Christmas store this year. We're trying to figure some way to do it safely. We don't know that there is. We have several groups working on it. We definitely will not do it the way we have in the past. I mean, we had 2,400 volunteers come during a 5-day span, and we had 4,200 families come and shop. We can't do that. So we're trying to come up with some alternative to be able to offer the joy in the celebration of Christmas, because this would be our 25th annual, and that started in the basement of Christ the King 25 years ago.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, and I share your concern, and you got my prayers, and wow, and it's wonderful to have this history in the history with our parish with Christ the King. Just a side question, one of those things that I guess the makings of a short story. Have there been romance and weddings that have happened among the clients? You speak of a community, and I'd like to hear that's, without divulging too much, if you could tell a story or two.
Oh, well, one of the most favorite, we've had clients who have, in fact, we had the first wedding, I guess about 1.5 years after we opened down at 5th and Chestnut. And those folks, one of them is still with us. The other, we don't know where he is. But anyway, she came back to us after, I'm not sure what happened, but we don't ask. But one of the most successful are 2 volunteers that got together. And they met we've had several volunteers meet at the Catholic Action Center, have that same passion for helping others. Well, you may know Melissa and Robbie. I won't use their last name, I guess. But he was one of our core volunteers. She became one of our core volunteers. They now have 3 wonderful children. They're members of the Newman Center. and I'm the godmother of one of them. But we always laugh and say at the Catholic Action Center has been responsible for many couples and several that we've participated in weddings, etc.
I'll be darned.
Mhm.
Virginia, it's been a long time, and I know there's literature and a professional, I guess, term of compassion fatigue. How do you take care of yourself? How do you keep your zing and your spirit?
Well, I tell you what, the COVID had us running so fast and so furious. A lot of it just has to do with why I do what I do. Honestly, the biggest hurt had to do when we had to start turning people away and get past that and realize that we had to focus on the folks that we have. If you go down and see these folks every day, they keep, they're amazing. They really are. Their stories are amazing. They're the ones who are the, underreported and unknown. But, to walk into, just as you walk into your community of faith, walking into the community of the Catholic Action Center is uplifting. Now, there are times that it gets a little much, but that just takes a good night's sleep. And the next day I realize, after 21 years, and almost 25, it's, people say, you still doing it? Aren't you going to retire? I said, there's no retiring from this mission. As long as good Lord gives me energy and health and the ability, I will never, say it's time to hang it up, because it's not. And now, we did have great hope that at some time all these folks would be cared for. The day that there are no people left on the streets and no need, sure, I'll just come home and Jim and I will watch TV and eat bonbons. I don't think that day's going to happen. I think they'll always be with us, but it's a joy and a blessing because the community does surround us in ways that, 20 years ago it was more difficult. Now it's an amazing walk in faith to see how people do care, at least among us.
Hey, Jenny, I do have a question that came in, Father Paul, if I can interject.
Sure, jump in.
Yeah, Mary Lynn just asked if you can take donations of clothing, and I know you mentioned it earlier that you do, this is different times, so maybe you can just elaborate on how people can help and what they can do for you right now as all the rules stand at this point.
Right. We can't take any clothing, etc. I know a lot of people, it's been hard having to tell everybody that we had a pipeline with no, but we can't. And even if they wash it, even if they bring it in a bag, the health department's told us don't do that. They're not sure, we don't know enough about this virus at this time even, but the likelihood of transmission by entering anything into that building that we're not sure of. Now, when we're going to be putting up a wish list with Amazon, because there are things that we still could be getting, but if it were delivered like that, it's all good. So if people care to, whether it cleaning supplies or whether it be, salt and pepper or sugar or whatever the things are that we do need, we're going to start a list with Amazon. Someone suggested that to us, and I thought that's excellent because even though it may not be as safe as we think, the health department, everybody's saying those are fine. That's fine too. So we hate to ask people to have to spend money when they otherwise would go out, buy something for us and bring it in. But we also don't want to be sending them out to stores to buy things. We don't want people getting in risk to get the things that we need. So I think that's, if anybody wants to follow what we need, they can go to Facebook, and we're going to start posting it. Ever so often we post things, but now we're going to start doing it even more because there's so many people that are ready to make a difference and how can they help. So our Facebook, which is Catholic Action Center, of course.
Yeah, that Amazon wish list is a great idea because people shop there anyway, so it's very easy for them to do.
And we can adjust it. That was the thing I was concerned about. If we ask for socks and we end up getting 1,000 socks that we're not able to use, because we also don't have, well, we do. You know, once when we asked for blankets, we got over 1,200 in a day. You know, that was the community bringing them in. And we are going to be facing winter, and we are going to be facing new challenges. We know that. So everything can, you know, what I'm telling you today is today. Who knows next week, you know? That's one thing we've learned in this. We can't set up the plan without being flexible. But that's what we will be doing, is keeping it on the Facebook. But as far as taking, the only thing we were taking right now is we set up another apartment for one our homeless veterans. And I know Kelly posted what we needed, I'm pretty sure, on Facebook. If she didn't, I'll get her to now. Because there are a few things that we needed to complete that. We have a homeless veterans program, and we're increasing it by one apartment. So we can do that. So Facebook would be the best way, but no clothes. And even when it gets into the winter, we don't know if we can ask people for their coats and gloves and hats like we always have. We don't know yet. And we hate it when people pull up and find out they can't come in the building and they can't make the donation. We have to send one of our folks out and just explain. We have it posted every place. We have huge signs telling people, but it's just not who we are. We're a house of hospitality that is dependent on the community, and now we've had to close off some of that to keep everybody safe.
Folks can always make financial donations too, of course, and institutions can, and churches can, and that just means an awful lot too, and gives you all space to do what you need to do.
Well, that's how we
We're
do
going to
it.
wrap up, and I'd like to ask just one last question of you. It's a wild one.
Uh-oh, wow, Paul, uh-oh.
Yeah, if you were asked to give a graduation address to high school seniors, what would be your main pointer to?
To high school seniors. That's a good one, Paul. I would say, love the ones around you. Appreciate your life. Walk together. And we'll all get through this together.
All righty. Well, Jenny, thanks so much. And Deacon Tim, of course, thanks as always for guiding us along. Thank you for your ministry. And thanks for the great interview that we've done. And blessings to you and fellow ministers and members of the community and those who are on the edge, you know, that are in need of the services that you all can provide. So thank you so much for the interview, but even more so, thanks for what you do and who you are.
Oh, well, thank you, Paul, and thank you all so much for everything. I appreciate being on because I always like to keep connected with our Christ the King family. God bless you all.
Blessings, everybody. We'll be back on our regular schedule next week on Thursday at 10 o'clock, and we'll be talking with a team of folks from the school about their plans and how things are coming together. So blessings to everybody. Have a great weekend.